progress. Welcome to our last development call of the year. All right, little polite clap for us and making it through 2024. So good on you guys. Today we also are lucky enough to be in the presence of Mei Lee Rickard-Tang, Australian women's O-line cutter and Crocs selection invitee as well. So if you guys have any questions, she's got to run off after this, but if you guys have any questions during Q&A, please direct them to her as well. Save me a bit of effort. Sounds good? All right. All right, we're going to jump into the presentation. We've got a packed agenda. We're going to be talking about a number of things, and then we've got Q&A time at the end. So let's just jump right into it, okay? Any questions to start?
Nope.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right, development call, 13th of December, 2024. Friday 13th, spooky edition. Last call of the year, very exciting. Here's what we're going to cover. We've got community updates for 5 minutes, top of mind. So if you're new, usually we go through a 15-minute segment on what's top of mind for me. Today, we're going to be talking about how we can train solo because we're going into this festive period where we might not be around our clubmates. And so I figured we can do a presentation on that today to help you guys get more value out of your solo training. Then we got 30 minutes of Q&A and then 10 minutes of FAF without the recording on, just for you, Mark. All right. Community updates. Number 1, book in your 2025 annual planning session. We'll set our goals for the year, book in some time with me in January, and we can talk about what you need from me in 2025. So we'll use that session to set some goals, set some outcomes, and we'll do that in January. So after this call, jump into the section of the classroom, book it in. A repeat of last week's slide, using the group during the holidays. I want you guys to lean in to the group during the holidays. The festive period is a time that, where we might not be able to be with our club mates, with the people that we'd normally train with. But I want you guys to use this group to stay accountable and lean into it and still use this as a learning resource during that period. And so I expect the gains gallery to pop off during the holidays. Okay, I want to see you guys staying accountable, using the group and holding yourself accountable to your training. There's a bunch of resources that are in the group: 7-Day Ultimate Accelerator, development call recordings, private call recordings. So use this time to catch up on all that ultimate knowledge that is available to you. And lastly, even though I'm on holiday, and even though Mei Lee's on holiday with me as well, we're still available to you. So go to our profiles, hit chat, ask us a question. We'll be there available for you. If you really need a little bit of detail, ask it. I'll record a Loom video for you. And if you want, we can just jump on a quick call as well. I might be able to jump on and we can do a quick 5-10 minute chat to solve any problems you have. All right. As always, we're building up to the greatest Sky Trainer giveaway in February. That is hype. That is going to be very exciting. And I'm also working on a few things in the works. 4-week transformation challenge in draft at the moment. Going to come back to you guys in the new year with 5 sets of resources, training plans that you guys can use in 2025. Phenomenal. Moving on to the important stuff. Most cracked view for a gains gallery post. Okay, so I've got 4 options for you guys to choose from. We got Ryan, Will. All right, New York skyline, not bad. Okay. Mark, pretty good feed. And we got Dan's sketchy pickup. Okay, so I'm gonna launch the poll. And we're going to vote on our favorite view. Is it going to be Ryan? Nice pool view in the gym. Is it going to be Will? Is it going to be Mark's delicious feed? Or is it going to be Dan? All right, how many people do we have? Cool. I'm going to end the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right. So we got 4 votes for Will, 3 votes for Dan. To be honest, I can't believe this even happened. Who's playing Ultimate on Concrete? That is crazy. Anyways, winner is Will. Fantastic. All right. now let's get to business. So let's start this presentation side of the call. How to train solo. Here's what we're going to cover. Why bother? Thanks, Matt, for the inspiration. Then we're going to jump into how to train solo, creating an action plan, guidelines to follow when it comes to training solo, and how to decide on the activities to do. And then lastly, we're going to finish off with things to try the next time you're solo training. All right. Firstly, why bother? Thanks, Matt. Does anyone know what this picture is or what it represents or what sport this is? Just call out if you know.
Basketball.
Basketball. Do you know what happened this year in Olympic basketball, Matt?
No, wait, I could be getting my years mixed up, but that's not. No, I don't know.
Okay,
So
so
I was thinking
basically,
like a dream team, but anyways,
yeah,
go on.
yeah. So basically, Team USA had won almost like every Olympic championship basketball finals up until this point. In 2004, they lost. All right. So they came back in 2008 with a vengeance. And they said, all right, we're going to make this redeem team. We're going to put together this squad to take Team USA back to winning gold. All right. And so there's this story. To my fellow Americans, call out if you know where this place is.
Is that Vegas?
It's Vegas.
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 And so in 2008, this redeem team goes to Vegas. And, you know, when you're at Vegas, you go out, have a good time, you go out and party. All right. And so they have this scrimmage or training in Vegas. And then they go out really late. They come back to the hotel at 3 or 4 a.m. And this is like a true story, right?
Oh.
And fair enough, in the lobby, as they're going back to their rooms at 3 to 4 a.m., there's one person that has just come back from the gym after waking up in the morning. And that's Kobe Bryant. Okay. So all these people, all the Team USA team is rocking up to the hotel, you know, early morning, and Kobe has already finished a workout and is going to have breakfast. Right. And so what happened here was everyone was like, holy shit, like this guy is training harder than all of us, right? He's actually going out, getting the solo work done, going to the gym, getting his shots up, and we're out here partying, right? And we're supposed to be this redeem team that's supposed to redeem Team USA. And so what happens is he ignites that spark in everyone. And from that day on, everyone started waking up early, started hitting the weights, started going to the gym, and started getting shots up really early in the morning, right? Just based on this one athlete's actions, demonstrating by example, going out and training solo. All right. And so the final score of the Olympic final, the final game that they were building up towards, it was 118 to 107. All right. Team USA won by just 11 points. 11 points was the difference between success and failure. And so you can think, if Kobe didn't kick it all off by first training solo, would Team USA still have won? Maybe it was all those 1% wins across all the teammates in that squad, ignited by that one story of, you know, going back to the hotel and Kobe, you know, already being there, getting in his first workout. Maybe that's what made the difference to help Team USA win by just 11 points. And so the idea is the gap between success and failure doesn't actually look like this. It looks more like this, right? It's a really small gap between success and failure. And that gap is filled by the effort we put in when no one is watching. Okay? The effort we put in when we have an opportunity to put in the work, when we're by ourselves, when no one is watching. So that's why I want to train solo. Let's jump into the details. How can we actually start training solo? So first things first, we want to start with the plan. All right. Proper planning prevents poor performance. So step one is to figure out our focus area. And so I have this tool available. Go into day 3 of 7-Day Ultimate Accelerator. And the idea is you can put in all your stats, figure out where you want your future state to be, and it will spit out exactly what priority areas that you should be working on, whether that's throwing, cutting, catching, or defense. And then in your fundamentals as well, for example, conditioning or speed, skill, or game IQ. So if you haven't used this tool yet, go into day 3 of 7-Day Ultimate Accelerator. I talk through how you can use the tool to find out what you can do to improve. From there, we want to create our action plan. All right. And so the idea is we want to focus on those specific development areas. And I also go through this in that same lesson. So if you need a specific example, go into that course and watch that. And in day 4, we go through how you can create your own timetable. So here's a specific example of a timetable that we might be doing during the season, where you can see we put a little bit of effort every single day. So it might just be 20 minutes of throwing on a Monday night, right? It might just be, a half an hour, 45-minute gym session on Tuesday morning, Thursday morning, right? But the idea is we want to have these little sessions that we can do day by day, and we want to plan it so that we know, okay, Tuesday, I know what to expect. Wednesday, we know what to expect. Thursday, we know what to expect, right? And so having that structure helps us stay accountable because we know what we're aiming for. We know what the North Star is. We know what we're expecting to achieve throughout the week. All right, so that's our first step, creating an action plan. And so these are the loose guidelines that I like to follow when it comes to solo training. And we're going to go through these one at a time. The first one is I like to keep the same development pillar or fundamentals for 4 weeks at a time. All right, so if we go to these pillars, throwing, cutting, catching, and defense, I like to dedicate chunks of 4 weeks on any one thing. Okay, and it can be more, it can be less, but the idea is that's kind of the sweet spot where you can work on all the little details when it comes to those pillars, right? For example, even just throwing, even if you just picked one throw, right? Let's say inside flick. There's so many nuances when it comes to touch, speed, shape, release points, release speed, right? All these things are little variables that might take a session to pick up, a session to learn. And so if we're spreading our effort thin across all these pillars, it's going to be very difficult to improve at any one thing. And so the idea is we want to focus on one of these pillars 4 weeks at a time and really break it down into something that we can work on and actually improve on. All right. Ties into the next piece, which is we want to choose 1 to 2 focus areas per week. So this might be specific throws or specific parts of the throw, right? Like the float or the touch or the speed or the release pivot distance. This might be specific defensive spaces, right? We might be working on laying out on the inside lane or laying out on the upline, right? Or we might be focused on poach defense, right? Whatever it is, helping off the back. This might be specific types of cuts, like an upline handler cut. But the idea is we want to be very detailed in the focus areas that we're working on every week so we can tick them off as we go. When we're at the field, then we want to spend 80% of our time on these focus areas. Okay, the idea is if we want to develop these, we've got to spend the majority of our time in those areas. And then we want to dedicate 20% of our time to maintenance. And so everything else that you might need to still be doing, if your focus area is, for example, defense, doesn't mean we give up on our throwing, doesn't mean we give up on our cutting, doesn't mean we give up on our catching. We still want to spend that 20% of time on our maintenance. Last 2 points in this section for loose guidelines. As soon as you can reasonably do so, start making everything game realistic. And I'll go into some examples of how we can do that a little bit later. And then the last point ties back to one of our community values, 1% a day. The idea is as little as 15 minutes a day can mean the difference between failure and success. And so the idea is we want to get in the habit of doing a little bit every day, because that minimizes the gaps that we have between sessions. That minimizes the gaps where we might be forgetting about the last session. We might need to recuperate and figure out what we're doing, right? And so we want to minimize that cost of a new session. And we just want to have those sessions iterative every single day so that we can build and build and build without any delay. All right. What if you don't know what to do? So we've talked about all these guidelines, things that you guys can try, specific throws, specific focus areas to work on, and how to do it. But what about what exactly to do when you're at the field and you've decided you want to work on this thing, right? Well, here's an easy step. Firstly, just ask, right? We have this community, we have these community members and resources for a reason. So reach out to me, reach out to your fellow community members, use this session and ask to figure out what it is that you need to do. I'll share with you what has worked for me. I'll also share what the best in Australia do. And through that, we can help you figure out the activities that will work for you. All right. But the answer I will probably come up with is the answer is often the simple but difficult thing. All right. And I think you guys would have heard me say this a few times already, but I'll just say it one more time. The answer is often the simple but difficult thing. So what are some examples of that? If you can't run for a long time during a game, what should you do? You should run. If you can't throw in game scenarios, you should do game realistic throwing. If you can't lay out, you should lay out. Right? Practice laying out, practice layout progressions. If you're not great at cutting in a game, practice your cuts, do cutting. You're probably getting bored of me now. One more last example. If you're not great at defense, practice defending. Okay, so the answer is often the simple but difficult thing to do, right? It's very boring to go out and, work on our layouts, and it might hurt a bit. It might be a bit painful. It might be repetitive, but that's why it's difficult. And that's the path of max pain. And that's the path we want to go to be able to get results. All right. And so now I want to go through important things to try next time you're solo training. And so these are going to be the actionable things that you guys can try during this holiday period that are going to keep you guys in shape and provide some structure around how you guys are training. And so I've got 3 things I'd love you guys to try during your next solo session. The first thing is athletic prep. And this is the warm-up we do at Sunder. And this is the warm-up that I swear by. And it takes only 10 minutes. But the idea around athletic prep is that it ticks all the boxes from an activation perspective. And it has groups of plyometrics and stuff inside that keeps the right muscle groups engaged and active throughout the week. And so I strongly believe that if you do athletic prep every single day for 10 minutes, it's very unlikely that you'll be less athletic by the end of the week, by the end of 2 weeks, by the end of a month. And so I'll challenge you guys, whenever you're at the field, put in 10 minutes of athletic prep time. The next thing is maximum aerobic speed. And this is conditioning. And so a similar thing, right? This is one thing that we can do in our sessions that only takes 15 minutes that will help us stay consistent in our conditioning for the sport, right? Ultimate's a field sport. We're going to be on the field for a long time, long durations. We want to be fit. And so getting in that 15 minutes, again, it's not a long time. 15 minutes of work consistently 2 or 3 times a week will help us keep up that conditioning for those strenuous points in games. The last thing I want you guys to try the next time you're training solo is self-catch throwing. And so the idea is we want to do this to practice our in-game option taking. And so I heavily believe that you guys should be never, static throw and just rip 100 discs at a time, but put yourself in a game scenario, right? Maybe take only 10 discs or 15 discs. Throw it to yourself, put yourself in a game scenario, throw with wide and fast pivots and release points as if you were in a game. That's the best way we're going to translate our practice when it comes to our skills into in-game. All right. The last thing is advanced things to try next time you're solo training. And so these are the little tactics that you guys can sprinkle into your solo training activities to make it a little bit more interesting, but to also try things a bit out of your comfort zone and visualize more when it comes to your solo training so that you can apply it in your games. All right. Advanced things to try next time you're solo training. They get increasingly more interesting, but also more valuable. The first thing is throwing with a physical mark. So if you have a partner, get them to bump you, get them to push you on the mark, right? Get them to accidentally foul you, right? And so the idea is get them to stall and get them to stall fast, for example. We want to get used to calling marking infractions like fast count or wrapping or straddle, right? Whatever it is, we want to get used to calling it, or we want to be used to using the disc as a tool to get those physical marks off of us. And so that's one thing that we can do to practice playing against a physical mark, because that's probably what we're going to get in a high intense game at a tryout or at a national final. So we want to get used to calling these marking infractions. We want to get used to using the disc as a tool to get our defender off of us within the confines of the game, within the confines of the spirit of the game, to be able to hit our options. The next one is reaction-based throwing. And so I've got two examples here. The first one is flipping a disc. And so the idea is we want to replicate external stimulus when we're training. And so in a game, right, we always see an option in front of us and we have to react to what they do, if they cut under, if they cut deep. So how we can replicate this is by flipping a disc. If it lands up, we throw the huck. If it lands down, we throw the fake, and then we throw the under. Okay? So that's one way that we can apply reaction-based throwing into our solo training to replicate a game scenario. The other thing is if you're with a partner, you can get them to call out a keyword. So you can get them to be your receiver, and maybe they'll say deep, or maybe they'll say under, or maybe they'll say yes, or maybe they'll say no. And so the idea is they might make a cut and they say no, which means you fake it off and then you hit the opposite. Okay, so that's reaction-based throwing. Again, these get increasingly more interesting as they go. The next one is self-throw and toe the line. So if you guys have seen Brian Neverson on Instagram, he does a lot of self-throws and tries to toe the line, is laying out and, skying himself. And so that's one thing that we can do to prepare our body for the types of contortions that we're going to do in a high-intensity ultimate frisbee game. Last two, probably the most interesting, not throwing. And so the idea is when we're going for a throwing workout, if we want to practice taking on good options, we want to practice not throwing as much as we would in a game. So if 50% of your shots, your options in a game are fakes, if 50% of your options are looked off in a game, then in theory, 50% of our training should be fakes as well, not throwing at all. And so I want you guys to visualize and imagine an option that's coming and imagine the defense is tightly on them. If that's the scenario, when we're practicing, we actually want to throw the fake instead of actually just ripping 10 throws in a row. And so as much as you're throwing fakes in game, I want you guys to throw fakes in training as well. It's probably more valuable if we do 20 focused throws that are going to be exactly like a game scenario compared to 100 throws that we're just randomly ripping. Last one, and this is my personal favorite activity, and also the most interesting out of the bunch, playing a 7v7 point by yourself. And so this requires a little bit of imagination. Okay, Mark, you might require a little bit of your experience with the novels that you're reading. And so it takes a bit of imagination. All right. But imagine you're on a field, you're doing the pool chase, you're on defense, and imagine you're playing a 7v7 point by yourself. Imagine there's someone in front of you, start the stall, right? And then start flashing your arms in the lane, whatever it might be, like pivot on the stall, lay out, right? Or follow them into the stack and then follow them on an undercut and then follow them on a deep cut. Imagine they got it. What are you going to do, right? Imagine you're going for a poach block. What are you going to do, right? Then flip it. Imagine you're catching the pull. Imagine you're centering the disc and then positioning yourself positive of the disc. Imagine you're getting into the cutting lane and then having an ISO cut and then you get it. Or if you don't get it, what do you do? This activity requires a lot of visualization, but it is my personal favorite because if you can do it right, it's almost as valuable as playing a game itself. And so the perfect version of this is if we're in this world where we're perfectly immersed inside the game in our mind, and it's just as valuable as playing a championship level game. We're not always going to be there, but the idea is we can get closer to replicating that inside our training. Summary. Number one, start with a plan. We want to have our timetable. We want to have our focus areas. If you don't know what to do, go to the lessons inside the 7-Day Ultimate Accelerator, and that's going to help you. Or you can ask me and we'll go through it together. So that's start with a plan, identify your focus areas, create an action plan and timetable. Number four, find out what activities to do, ask, and these are usually the simple but difficult thing, okay? If you need to practice laying out, lay out. If you need to practice game throwing, do game throwing. If you need to practice defense, do defense. If you need to practice cutting, do cutting. If you're not fit enough for a game, run. If you're not strong enough, if you don't jump high enough, jump higher, right? And so it's always going to be the simple but difficult thing. And the idea is, yes, it might be repetitive. It might be difficult. It might be boring. But that's the gap that separates good from great, failure from success. Last 2 points. Important things to try: athletic prep, maths, game realistic throwing. Lastly, advanced things to try. And we touched on the importance of visualization. And so you can go back into the video. I'll make it available for you guys to go through all those advanced things. But the key thing here is all these advanced things rely heavily on the idea of visualization and bringing that game-like scenarios into your solo training. If you put in 1% a day, how much better will you be after 365 days? Imagine a number in your head. Is it 3 times? Is it 5 times? Is it 8 times? Is it 20 times? The answer, 37 times. If you put in 1% a day, every single day in 2025, by the end of 2025, you'll be 37 times the player that you are today. And so it all comes down to that little 1% a day, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, whatever it is. That's going to lead to this result. 1% a day. If you need help, I recently had a great call with Matt that we went through, talking through prioritization before his UFA tryouts. And so if you need an example of that, go into the private call recordings. That's available in there as well. I also had a call with Will, who's working on becoming a more impactful O-line handler. And so if you need another example of the details that we talked through there, you can go into the private call recordings. You can watch that. But if that's not enough, book in a call with me. Ask me in this session. I'm in your corner and we can talk through it together, one-on-one. All right. Closing notes. We're almost there. Training solo is hard. Not getting better at Ultimate is also hard. The good thing, you can choose your hard. Take it step by step. start with the things from this call and in the community, and you'll smash it. All right, that's the presentation for today. So, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. And I know it was a long one, but I think it was an important one for you guys to get ahead of the Christmas time, ahead of the festive period, so that you guys have the tools to get the most out of your training in this time. And I think the one thing that I want to hammer home is that this is an opportunity to get ahead, right? It's an opportunity to put in the extra work that other people might not be doing. And so if you guys can just put in that 1%, might take a bit of effort, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, but that consistency means that it's a little bit of effort for a big result at the end. All right, I'm opening it up to the floor. We can have questions. It can be either related to the topic, unrelated to the topic. You can ask me, you can ask May, you can ask Mark, you can ask Matthew, you can ask Jake, you can ask everyone inside the group. Everyone's got some knowledge. And so let's open this floor up to Q&A. Any reflections on the presentation in general? Any vibes, good, bad, interesting, wacky, anything we didn't expect?
I'll jump in. Actually, yeah, I'll probably, it's more of like a comment, and actually, if anything, like talking about the visualization part, I think it's pretty underrated as a skill. I remember I actually was a cutter before COVID happened, and then during COVID was actually then transitioned to more of a handler role. And it was interesting because a lot of my throws actually got a lot better after COVID, even having not touched the disc for like, I don't know, 5 to 6 months. And like touching the disc in a way where it's like even like throwing to a target. And generally like throughout that time, it was a lot of visualization, or just like even thinking about like how a disc kind of like feels as if it's coming off my hand, or even like if I need to throw it this far, how much like, you know, spin and velocity do I need to have, all that stuff. And there's also tons of science backing that. So if it's not enough Eric saying that, then I'm like almost, I'm sponsoring you and backing you in your campaign, and saying that it is also it is a very strong tool to use.
It's the science behind it, is what I'm hearing.
There is science behind it, so it's a very powerful tool. Multiple stories of people being like multiple stories. If we have time at the end, I'll share one, but or even now. But yeah, I really appreciate the whole concept of even like solo training. I know how like hard it can be, and being able to visualize like what a game scenario might look like, or even like what you might do in a certain scenario, I feel like adds like that much more quality. And I know that's something you talk about in your course, to the reps that you're doing. So
yeah. And the idea is like the ideal state is if like we're playing a championship final, right?
Yeah.
And so as much as we can get closer to that through our mental space, right? And you can imagine like how you're going to feel when it's a championship final. You're probably going to be a bit nervous. Your heart rate's probably going to be a bit higher. Your palms might be a bit sweatier, right? You might be a bit more jittery. It might be windy, right? And so as much as you can replicate all those feelings and emotions by putting yourself in that exact same mental space, and then being able to tackle it from there, I think that's a useful tool to have in the arsenal.
Just going off that point as well, Matt, I had a friend who we played the recent WUCC campaign together, but she'd played World Games beforehand. And during part of like the training process, like visualization is kind of quite a key, like had a key role. So the coach at the time did like a lot of visualization with the team during like training camps and things as well. And then people did it at home, and she shared an example of how like before she was doing the visualization, she kind of got in her head a lot during gameplay and like during those high stakes moments. And after completing like all of the visualization training, by the time she was playing world games, she was like on the line and not nervous at all. So I feel like I definitely felt the effects of visualization like in my recent campaign. But I felt like that was a really good example to hear, like personally, of someone who has felt the gains of visualization. I also probably have to leave now because I need to go back to work, but it was lovely to meet everyone, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
See you, mate.
Bye, May.
Any other questions? Even if it might be more personal scenarios that you guys are going through. Anything at all, related or unrelated?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
So usually, I'm curious to know what and it's okay if you don't have one, but I'm curious to know if like people have a certain word or like mantra that they use to sort of get into that mindset of like, okay, we're here, like I'm here to like dial in, or I'm here to at least like be focused. Because I find that sometimes, so I think it's like maybe I'm going to like play at League or something, and it's like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or something. It's like super late. Maybe I'm a little tired, but then trying to figure out, okay, how can I like stay focused or even use this time to the best of my ability? Wondering if there's what people's strategies are to like get, you know, into that focused state, or like, or even just like, I don't know whether it's a mantra or a word or anything like that.
I think for me, it probably starts with setting an objective, because I find like there are sessions at League where I'll just go and I'll just play. And compared to sessions, like sometimes May and I are driving in the car and I say, "What's your focus for tonight?" And she says, "Oh, well, maybe I could focus on this." And then she asks me, "What's your focus for tonight?" And I've said, I want to run down really hard every time I'm on defense, just on the ball." Right. And so I think it starts with for me at least, it starts with like actually having a plan or having an objective of what I want to get out of that league, that session. And so like, depending on what I'm working on that week, and it kind of ties into that focus area, it's like, if I'm working on, say, my option taking, maybe my focus is, oh, I want to be behind the disc, I want to be in the handler space, and I want to be 100% on option taking, or I only want to take on hucks that I know that I can hit. Well, whatever it is, the idea is, from my perspective, if you come in with a goal, and then that kind of sets itself up as its own mantra. Because if my goal is like, I'm going to run down hard every point on D tonight, then whenever I'm in that situation, I'm like, okay, cool, I got to run down hard on D, right? Or I got to have good option taking, or I got to lay out on defense. Whatever it is, whatever that focus area is, I can keep that with me for that week, for all those sessions that I'm going through. That's my example. I don't know, Mark, Ellis, Jake, Ryan, do you guys have anything that helps you guys get locked in when it comes to solo training or staying focused?
I think for me, it's mainly like music. Like sometimes I'll be laying on my couch and I'll be like feeling kind of lazy and like I don't want to work out that day. But then like when I end up listening to like a good song, like when I like kind of put my phone down, or I just like turn on a song and put my phone down, I can kind of like amp myself up and get myself into like a better mood to work out.
One
Yeah,
way that
that's
I
so good.
know I stay locked in, like you said, Eric, I do go in with a plan. Like if I know I want to work on say throws or say cutting for that instance, I tell myself like this is what I got to get done today. And like you said before, 1% a day makes you better. And I'll just be out there for hours. It might be midnight, 1 a.m. At least here it is. But even after shift, I'll still find a way to get out there. So I think it's important.
Yeah. And Jay, can I ask, so you have those sessions planned in your week where you're like, oh, I know like this shift is occurring, and then I know I want to, you already have the plan in your head that you're going to go out and work out afterwards?
I certainly do.
Yeah.
I definitely will be thinking about it like while I'm on shift or say I'm at work.
Yeah.
I'll be constantly thinking about, okay, so we worked out already in the morning, but we haven't done anything frisbee wise. So maybe let's get some throws in.
Yeah.
You know, day's not over yet. So let's get into it, get after it. You can
Yeah.
always
I
make
think
yourself better.
that's a big one, is like, it's all well and good to like, you know, once you've set the objective to go out and do it, to do it. But I think there's a bit of like friction at the point on like deciding actually to go and do it. And so I think what's worked well for me in the past is like, if I have the idea, or if I know that, if I don't necessarily have a plan, but I know that I want to go for a running set on Saturday or whatever it is, like I'll just announce it to everyone around me and I'll say, hey, May, I'm going on a running set on Saturday, or I'll tell my teammates I'm doing a mass set on Saturday. And so like that's almost like an extra layer of accountability, and also a reminder to myself that that's what I should be doing. And or it might be like going to the gym tonight, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym tonight, even though I haven't gone in a while, right? That might be the extra layer of accountability that you need to actually go out and do that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's like I said, I think on Matt's post, it's all about like the routines and habits. So like if I know, like I said on his post, like I'm a creature of habit. So I know like, and I like schedules. So like I know Monday is like I get off work at like 4:30, so I can go home, walk the dogs, finish that, go to CrossFit, and then Tuesdays obviously I work all day, but Wednesday, Thursday, no problem. And so like it's all a matter of like, sorry, my dog is about to throw up. All right, cool. It's all a matter of like I know that if I sit down on the couch after walking the dogs and feeding the dogs, then my night's over. So like I know like okay, immediately feed the dog, hold the dogs, and then just get out the door. And so having a kind of like a set plan throughout the week, like that happens every week, and then also like having those habits of okay, do this, then this happens, kind of keeps me consistent.
Yeah, like having those cues and like structures. When something happens, you do this, or when this happens, you do that, to keep yourself in that flow of doing the right activities that are in your plan. I like that.
Also, on the second day of tournaments. Okay. Go ahead.
You can talk.
Oh, that's cool. Usually on the second day of tournaments, as a 36-year-old, I get a little sore. So if I know that if I start the day, I'll think, oh, I'm so sore, I'm so old, I don't usually play as hard. So it's kind of like the mindset. So put on some good music, some pumped up music and stuff like that.
Yeah, flip it. You're young, you're explosive, and you're ready.
Thing about what Eric said, I remember when I read this book right here, it's on my desk, Atomic Habits. I remember part of it was like when you're making your daily routine, like before bed, if you announce to yourself what you're gonna do, or like one of the important things that you want to do, you have a like higher likelihood of doing it because you want to hold yourself accountable to that. So I think that might be a tool that I'm gonna want to start using.
I'll try that.
You mean this book, Ellis?
Ah,
That's also a great book.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
good one
I
if you
wanna
guys haven't read it.
I wanna reread it because that's why I have it on my desk.
Yeah, I buy a bunch of books that I end up not reading, or like this one's actually quite good and like you can read a few chapters.
Yeah, I went through and like underlined a lot of the important things. So it's nice to just I can kind of open it to a random page and just see one of the things I underlined and remember
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. Oh, one thing that came to my mind was something that was very successful for me when I first, like in March of this year, early this year, I got injured and I broke my collarbone. And so it was very difficult for me to do anything because I wasn't allowed to. But as soon as I could start throwing, something that really worked for me to stay accountable to improve my throws in that time, since I wasn't allowed to run yet, was a challenge. And so the idea is if you can set yourself a challenge, which is like, I'm going to throw every day for 14 days, or I'm going to throw every day for 20 days, whatever it is, or I'm going to do uh, athletic prep, 10 minutes of athletic prep every day for 7 days, right? That's almost like goes above and beyond your schedule, but it holds you accountable because that is the kind of paradigm that you have to meet to be successful in the challenge, right? And so my biggest bounds of throwing improvement is when, and I don't know if you guys have seen my early days Instagram content when I'm like throwing in the rain and throwing, in like the worst conditions, right? Because I had set my plan to go and throw every day, no matter what. And so I'd argue that that ended up helping me become a elite thrower, a much better thrower now that now that I went through that. So challenges is one thing that I think is a good way to get into it as well. And that's also part of the challenge that I'm building for the group in February as well. So the idea is I want new members and I want you guys to go through kind of like a 4-week transformation challenge. And it can be in throwing, it can be as a thrower, it can be as a cutter, it can be as a receiver, or it can be as a defender. And so you'll eventually get access to all the resources, but the idea is you could do them one at a time. And so the idea of the challenge is that you get the training plans to follow throughout the week. You have to meet certain numbers of warm-ups or conditioning things or field sessions throughout the week. And the idea is there's an incentive at the end. If you complete the challenge, you get a little reward at the end as well. So it gives you that extra layer of accountability and you're doing it in a group together.
look forward to it.
A little aside note. I don't know if it's worth sharing, but this is just completely off topic, but I was doing some research on communities, and one of the top community builders in the school platform, his name is Calvin Hollywood, and he's German, and he used to work in the army. He used to work in an army capacity. And so, Jake, maybe you can give us some context on this. But in the army, their goal is to build highly functioning teams rapidly, right? So the idea is new people come in, fresh blood, don't know anyone, don't know what it's like, but they have to make these random strangers become brothers and sisters and have like a familial bond in the shortest amount of possible time, right? Because that is the trust and functioning that they need to be able to operate to defend, their country or their space or whatever, right? Does that sound along the right lines, Jake?
That is absolutely along 100% along the line.
And
I
so,
mean,
yeah, go on.
I'll go from my own experience. Before this deployment happened, for those that don't know, I am on deployment, but prior to this deployment happening, I got moved from my own organic squad into a brand new one with brand new people I've never worked with before. And now here we are, 5 months in, and we are very clicked, very much together. And we were like that probably within 2 weeks.
And so
It's very
I'd love to get your personal experience on this, Jake, but what I've heard is the way that the army builds this rapid trust and connection together is through shared negative experiences. And so you probably hear these stories of like boot camps where groups and squadrons are put through the harshest conditions, right? You have to wake up early. You have, a commander like yelling at you, getting you to wake up, make your bed, or you have, you just have to go out and run in like the middle of the night or whatever it is. But the idea is like, it's the shittest, cold showers, whatever it is, it's the shittest conditions, right? And so what I've heard is that collective suffering brings together people. Is that your experience, Jake?
So with that, you're absolutely right. And I'll go even further and say that we have a very famous saying, and I know everyone has probably heard it one way or another. You got to embrace the suck. And what that entails is, being together with a group of guys, even total random strangers, right? But as long as you're in the suck together, whether it be a cold, rainy day, but you still have to go out and be outside for 14 hours a day, whether it's, a blizzard outside and you don't want to do anything, but you're still required to be training of some sort, you're all in it together. It's just an experience that everyone shares together. And it definitely grows you guys as a team, as a squad, as a company, as a platoon.
Yeah.
As individuals.
So I'd love to take that, and I want to tie this back to Ultimate, and I want to give you guys an example of what. So Sunder used to be called Colony, Sydney Colony. They've since rebranded, but you guys will probably know the Colony name because they came second at WUCC in 2018 with Jimmy Mickle and Chris Kocher. But an old Colony tradition is the concept of Sparta. And so what Sparta is effectively a form of collective suffering. And so whenever a colony would train and do a scrim, at the end of Tuesday night, they would have a scrimmage, and there would be one team, Team A and Team B, whatever it is, right? And then they'd count the points. It'd be a really tough matchup, whatever it is, right? It's two highly contested teams. And whoever lost, the team that lost, would be in Sparta. And so the idea of Sparta is that you have to give up something. And so some weeks it might be that everyone until the next training can only have cold showers, right? Or has to wake up at a certain time. I don't know, whatever it is. But the idea of Sparta is that, number one, it puts something on the line when it comes to training, right? If you lose that scrimmage, you're literally going to have to do cold showers for the next 2 nights until the next scrimmage. And then if you lose that, you're going to have to do it until the next week, right? So number one, it puts something on the line, right? Just like the pressure, and comes back to the visualization piece, just like the pressure you would experience at a world championship final when something is on the line, right? And the next thing is that it brings people together. So if we have that collective suffering, that group having gone through that pain together, they've been in the suck together, right? They can come together and then try and accomplish that goal in the next training. Not to say, we've since shifted away from a club culture, from the idea of Sparta, right? It might be a bit too intense for certain individuals or iterations, but just food for thought in terms of how we might be able to facilitate bonding, trust, culture amongst high-performing teams. All right. Well, I want to give us some time to faff. So what I'm going to do is thank you guys for firstly attending our final development call. Again, this is going to be available in the classroom. So I went through a lot of detail today. If you need to review it, pull out a notebook and pen, watch the recording and get that detail in at your own time. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is wish you all a very safe, healthy, and happy holiday period. And we'll be back for our 2025 development calls in mid-January. I'm going to end the recording, and then we're going to have some time for Mark to faff.